Hey, this is Dawn today. We are here with Dana, a professional glazier.
I started just before my daughter was born. And my brother's been doing this since he was 18. And he's, God, how old is he now? Oh, he's going to shoot me. I think he's 36. But when me and my ex-wife got together, I called my brother. I said, "Hey, you're going to be an uncle." And he said, "Hey, you need a career." I said, "Okay." He said, "Come down to the Union Hall." And so he got me started in working as a glazer. I've been doing it the better part of 20 years. I've been in Seattle, Oregon, Minnesota, and now Central Illinois.
So, what did you do prior?
Before I got into construction, I had spent 2 years on disability. Before that, I had spent 10 years in healthcare. I started at the very bottom of the healthcare ladder as a ER tech, a orderly, and I worked
Mhm.
my way up to getting a degree in nursing.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Then
Yep.
you switched over to construction.
Well, yes and no. I had 2 years, about 2.5 years where I was on disability for PTSD. I was single, no kids, no dependents, not a care in the world, so what I made on my disability was more than enough for me. And then my roommate at the time, he hosted a birthday party, a motorcycle ride, and a picnic. I met my ex-wife. We started dating, and when I found out she was pregnant, I told my brother, I said, "Hey, you're gonna be an uncle." He said, "Hey, you need a career because you're going to have a family." And so I went down to, by that time, he had been doing this through the union like 6 or 7 years. So I went down to the union hall with them. I did the union test, made sure I could, read a tape measure, made sure I could carry, I think it was like 60 pounds,
Mhm.
made sure I knew how to tie off and wear a harness and just English comprehension and math skills, just basic math. Past that, I did that test in August and I started working in September.
If someone's like, "This is something that I want to do," would they have to go through is it basically the same, or now would it
Well,
be?
there's two different with just about every trade, at least every trade I can think of. There's two different avenues. There's union trade work and then there's non-union. For non-union, it's just a matter of finding a company willing to train you. But for union, it's a matter of learning where your union hall is, what trade you're going into, and then going down and talking to the business rep saying, "Hey, I'm interested in starting the apprenticeship," figuring out what tools you're going to need for the apprenticeship, figuring out what your work hours versus what your apprenticeship schooling hours are, what your requirements are to move up, step by step. And having seen the non-union side of what I do, you can pay me enough to get out of bed to do it. The non-union, their wages tend to be probably half of what you make union wise. The benefits, because they're non-union companies, aren't as good. The non-union side does have benefits because they have, like, if you're working for a company, you can get like Christmas bonuses or whatever. But the incremental benefits that non-union has does not outweigh the benefits that union has. We have medical, vision, dental, and I think 5 years ago, at least in our union for the Glazers, they started as well as mental health. So now we can go twice a month and get mental health work. We also have chiropractic and deep tissue massage because we spend a lot of time crawling around the floor on our knees trying to do things at floor level on the edge of buildings, or we're working overhead. But the training going through the apprenticeship program, it starts you at the very beginning. You get your OSHA certification, you get your ladder certification, your forklift certification, your fall harness, fall arrest and fall stop. You also learn your boom lift, your scissor lift. You learn how to use and get certified on using swing stages. These are all things that, we use every single day. And that is usually, from what I've seen traveling around the country, that's usually what's covered in the first year. Before they even really get you out, putting you in situations, they make sure you have your certifications, you have your knowledge, you have your skills. They have you practice driving different styles of forklifts around in the parking
Mhm.
lot. In each stage, each year as the apprentice, you move up. The next year for us was cutting glass and learning how to install frames. The year after that was caulking and sealants and flashing and learning how to do the architectural metal. Our fourth year was learning how to do things on our own and plan ahead without having to have someone constantly telling us, hey, this is the next step. What do you need to do? This is the next step. What do you need to do? And most apprenticeships throughout the country are 3 or 4 years. So if they have room, you can transfer your apprenticeship from one place to another. Life gets in the way sometimes and you have to move. But once you journey out and you have your journeyman card, that is a statement to all the other unions in the country that, hey, they went through a union certified apprenticeship program. They may not know exactly how you do it in your area, but they have the core skills to be able to jump in anywhere on your crew and be able to be productive without someone having to hold their hand. And that's what I've done. I've worked Seattle, Oregon, Minnesota, and now South Central Illinois. And I came out here. I spent the first 12 or 13 years of my career doing nothing but commercial work. So, high rise apartments. In Seattle, I've worked on Microsoft, Google, Facebook, Expedia, Amazon headquarters that went up. I've worked on college campuses, high schools, middle schools, elementary schools that were all new. And those are all commercial. And then I came out here, and even though I have not worked residential, because I went through the apprenticeship training program, I got in with a shop that does a mixture of commercial and residential, and I've been able to hit the ground running. And there are a couple of finer points that have had to be taught to me that are specific for residential glazing, but the overall skills, I was taught that in my apprenticeship.
Now you work for a company, it's not contract positions, you just work
No.
for a company?
No, I can't say everywhere in the country, but the 4 places that I've worked, because it's union, the union hall has a list of all the companies that have signed up for the union. So no matter what company you work for, you're guaranteed to make X amount of dollars because that's the union rate. And these companies have all said, "Hey, we're going to be signatories in the union. So if you have guys that are out of work, you can send them our way." And because it's a union job and it's a union apprenticeship, the companies all know that basically everybody has the same set of skills. So it is look at the list of companies that are the union companies and just
Mhm.
start calling saying, hey, I'm a first year apprentice. I'm a fourth year apprentice. I'm a journeyman with 10 years experience. Do you have any openings? And if they say yes, it's just a matter of going in, filling out your paperwork and just jumping in on a crew.
And now I see, like, so you're up really high on some of those photos that you sent me?
Oh, yeah. So a lot of the photos I sent you are from my time working either in Seattle or in Minnesota, where in the Seattle metro area especially is very compact. A lot of their buildings they build up. Where I'm at now in central Illinois, they have nothing but land, so all their building is building out. I have not worked on a building out here taller than 5 stories. Now in Seattle and in Minnesota, I helped build a hospital in Minnesota, do a renovation, and they increased the hospital from 5 floors to 9 floors. So we did all the work on the outside, filling that up. But in Seattle, all the jobs that I worked on that were in Seattle were 30, 40, 50 story towers.
Well, that's much safer.
Oh, everybody says, "Oh, I couldn't do it. I couldn't hang on the outside of a building, for 40 stories up."
Yeah.
But they don't realize you're tied off. You have a harness, you have a lifeline, you have a safety rope, or your swing stage is tied off to the building. You have a cable that your swing stage runs up and down. But they really go above and beyond to make sure everything is safe. They do daily inspections of all the equipment. If the cables or the ropes are frayed or cut or seem like they're beyond reasonable use,
Mhm.
they throw them out. They replace them right away.
Yeah. It still seems scary. I mean, I like heights, so I think it's kinda cool looking, but yeah, I could see where it would be kinda, like, scary thinking
I'll
if
tell you
something
what I
ever.
tell a lot of guys that I've worked with out in Seattle. I'm not real fond of heights, but my desire to provide a good life for my children outweighs my fear of heights. And with the amount of money you make working blue collar, uh, yeah, you want me to put on a hat and, crash cymbals and dance around in a circle for the kind of money I
Mhm.
make doing what I do? Absolutely. I can put my pride to the side and provide a life for my kids.
Well, you're different because you also did the college route.
I did. I think college it's overinflated the importance of college. If I
Mhm.
knew back then what I know now, I would have skipped college altogether. I would have stayed out of healthcare. I would have just gone straight into blue collar. I would have gone straight in as a glazer. I've seen kids in Seattle come out of high school 18, 19 years old. As a 19-year-old, they are a first year apprentice, have no construction experience. They've gone through their 4 years apprenticeship. By the time they're 24, 25, they own their house. They own their car with no car payment. They own their truck or whatever. By the time they are 25, 26 years old, just going through the apprenticeship and getting that, the first year or two as a journeyman out of the way, the guys who do it right, they come out of debt. They've got great credit. They own their house. They have something that they can show for it, and they actually contribute to the day to day. I mean, when I lived in Seattle, I could go for a walk in any direction, 4 or 5 blocks, and I could show my kids a half a dozen buildings I built, and those will be around for a while. Whereas a lot of guys coming out of college, they get a liberal arts degree and then they struggle for 5 years trying to figure out what they're going to do with that degree. And meanwhile, the interest on their student loans is killing them.
Yeah, there's no forgiveness on the student loans,
Yeah,
on the interest. Not
and
even on
like
the in
the apprenticeship is part school.
Mhm.
In different parts of the country do it differently. Out here in Illinois, they go after work one night a week. They do that every week during the school year. Back in Seattle, where I did my apprenticeship, we went for 8 hours on Friday and 8 hours on Saturday once a month. That was for that entire quarter. We did that 3 times a year during the school year. So the apprenticeship classroom goes about the same as a regular school year. It's part of the requirement. You have to have so many hours on the job and you have to have so many hours in classroom. If you go to class every day and you keep your grades up and you learn the school pays for itself. I mean,
Mhm.
your first quarter or your first year, you pay your tuition. If you pass that year, the next year is paid for. At least it was when I went through. It's an incentive program to make sure you show up, to make sure you get the grade you need while in classroom so that the apprenticeship can feel confident about the journeyman it's turning out.
If you had to say to someone what your day looks like, what is your day? What time do you start in the morning? Earlier in the
Uh
summer or
no, in Seattle, I would get up every morning at 3:30. I'd get my kids up, we'd have breakfast, and I'd be out the door by 4:45 because most of our job sites started at 6. So 6 to 2, 6 to 2:30 in Seattle was pretty normal.
Yeah.
Out here in Illinois, I wake up about 6 o'clock. I walk out the door at 6:30. I start at 7 and I'm usually done by 3:30. If I want overtime, it's there. If I don't want overtime, I don't have to take it. One of the things I love the most about my career working in the trades and working in the union is I've got holidays off. I've
Mhm.
got a set schedule Monday through Friday, which means I can make plans on a Saturday or a Sunday with my kids. I can look at a calendar and see what days holidays fall on. I know if the holiday falls on a Saturday, I'm going to have a Friday off. If the holiday falls on a Sunday, I'm going to have a Monday off. I can look at the beginning of the year and I can plan out all my 3, 4 day weekends and know that I have a set schedule. They don't force you to work overtime. They don't penalize you if you don't.
Mhm.
If you want it, it's there. All you have to say is, "Hey, I want some overtime." And, most places have more than enough to give you.
With your career right now, do you see a shortage?
No, out here where I'm at in Illinois, I think we've got 100 glazers in our union. That sounds like a lot, but this area is actually growing and we don't have enough glazers out here as it is. Back in Seattle, I think they had 1,300 glazers in their commercial union. The work out there, when it's going well, they can't keep enough people in the companies because there's just so much going on. Chicago's the same way. They've got a high number of glazers, but they don't have enough to cover all the positions. I spoke to a business rep for the Boston area, as a matter of fact, because I was looking at moving out to southeast New Hampshire and just commuting into Boston because they've got, all the Ivy League schools out there and they've got a lot of stuff going on in Boston. The only time people are out of work is if they choose to be because, they take a vacation, take a
Mhm.
week off or whatever. Or, and this is very rare. I've seen it once, I think, where the people are just incompetent to where they just don't get picked up unless they absolutely need to fill a spot. If you're competent and you know what you're doing, especially if you can find a corner of this market where not a lot of people excel, you're never out of work. If you can get in with a glazing company, because everybody thinks glazing is just, oh, you guys do windows. We do
Yeah.
windows, we do framing, we do brake metal, aluminum siding on high rises or cancer research facilities. We do interior, such as bathrooms, mirrors, shower doors, shower stalls. We do it's called hanging and swinging doors, slider doors like you see at the airport that are automatic, that are full glass. We'll hang them, we'll square them, we'll plumb them in the frame, we'll put the closer on, we'll put the sweeps on, make sure everything is good. But not a lot of people in a lot of areas know how to hang a door correctly. So that's one of those things where if you get really good at hanging doors, you'll never be out of work because all new construction needs doors hung up. But if you pick up other skills, if you get your certification belling and rigging, which is just, it's hooking up a load to a crane and being able to talk to the crane operator and put it in the right spot. That's a certification you can get additionally. If you can get your welder certification as a glazer, you're never out of work because we use welders in a lot of the stuff we do. If you can get a state certification as a flagger, traffic flagger, which, in major metro areas like Portland or Seattle or the Twin Cities, St. Paul, Minneapolis, when the glass deliveries come in on trucks, well, they have to, divert the traffic flow. You can't do that. You can't just show up and say, okay, I'm gonna, I've got my high vis on, I work for the company. I'm going to go control traffic. You actually have to be certified. So if you get a job, if you get a certification as a flagger, you become indispensable because you can now help doing the unloading and the craning.
Yeah, I've actually seen people that are flaggers and they've taken their career around the world. Well, I think that's pretty cool.
Um, I had my state certification as a flagger in Washington, and it's not a bad job if you do it once in a while. I personally could not stand on a road 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and just spinning the flag around.
Yeah.
They make really good money, but I just couldn't. And I think the thing that I like about being a glazer and building the buildings that I do and, watching as they become complete
Mhm.
is especially in Washington, you have Seattle and then you have Bellevue, and those are the nice areas. Those are all the blue collars and the tech guys. If you go out to lunch, like to Applebee's or whatever, and you're dressed blue collar, they look down their nose at you. They're like, "Oh, I make 60,000, 70,000 a year sitting in an office, blah, blah, blah. I'm Amazon, I'm Google, whatever." And they make
Yeah.
their 60, 70, $80,000 a year. They look down their nose at the guys like me that walk in, in our high vis and our dirty work boots. They don't realize we make more in a year building their office than they make sitting in their office. We have a marketable skill that we can take anywhere in the country.
I saw it firsthand when I was in the construction company. I worked inside, not outside. I would train. I don't know if have you ever worked with Procore? I would train Procore to the supers and the laborers. They would always come in and be like, I am not good with this, but I know how to build a building. I'm like, yeah, I understand. I couldn't build a building.
Yeah, I
They always felt like they had to like explain themselves to me. And I'm like, you don't need to explain yourself to me.
the here's the one thing because we have an apprentice right now. He's a second year apprentice. And he asked me the other day. This is what I told him. This is what I tell all the apprentices. Everybody looks at the blue collar money and blue collar trades. We make really good money. Lasers are in the top 10 um, for income just about everywhere in the country. I think in Seattle, they're ranked seventh for income. In Southern California, where it's real popular, I think they're ranked fifth. Glazers are usually in the top 10 in annual income. The problem is everybody wants to be a blue collar. They want the blue collar money. So they go to work in construction. There's enough construction workers. We
Yeah.
need tradespeople. Construction workers show up for the paycheck, and don't get me wrong, every tradesperson I know shows up for the paycheck. The
Mhm.
difference between a construction worker and a tradesman is tradesmen take pride in what they do. They
Yeah.
take pride in turning out a product or a finished building that they can look at and say, "Hey, I'm proud to say that I worked on that." Whether you're doing ironworking or electrical, if you're a sparky, if you're a tin bender, a glazer, a carpenter, find if you go in as an apprentice into the union, find someone who takes pride in being a tradesman, not someone who's a construction worker. You will get
Mhm.
a better on the job training. You will get better tips, better advice, better skills from someone who takes pride in their work than you will from someone who just shows up for the paycheck.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, 'cause they're specialized in their
Yeah. It's not for everybody. Don't get me wrong. I've been doing this the better part of 20 years. One of the worst accidents I had, I almost cut off my thumb with a skill saw, a circular saw. Just a couple weeks ago, I don't know if you can see that.
you can see that.
My finger's all discolored. I broke my finger in 2 spots. I hit it with a hammer, like smashed it as hard as I could with a hammer. Didn't do it on purpose, but I've blown out my knee. I've seen guys get hit in the back of the head and get knocked unconscious and have to take a month or 2 off and relearn some basic skills just because of the way they got hit. I've seen guys that have been doing this 20, 30, 40 years who walk with a limp because they've spent so much time kneeling down on one knee to get under this or get a punch list that. So it really isn't for everybody. It
Mhm.
will tear your body up. Some of the glass we lift, we had a piece today. It was 5 feet by 5 feet. It's 275 pounds. We've got unitized panels that can weigh upwards of 2,200 pounds. So if you think it's it's a good income, but you don't have to earn it, you're really mistaken. If you're not willing to put in the physical labor and the physical demand, you're not going to last.
Mhm. Do you feel it's kind of a benefit for you too because you're actually moving around all day? You're not sitting, like, in a chair all day.
Yeah, I've got lots of different career backgrounds. I was in the military when I was younger. I went into healthcare. I do this. I've worked private security, and of all the jobs I've done, I enjoy this one the most. Depending on what you do and what
Mhm,
area you do it, no 2 days are ever where I'm at out here in Illinois, no 2 days are ever the same. I show up to the shop, I get my job tickets, I load up the truck, and I'm out and running in the truck all day. Now in Seattle, it was you show up at a job site, throw all your tools in the gang box, and you're on that job site 8, 9, 10 months at a time. Even when you're on the same job site all the time, no 2 days are the same because no two
mhm,
floors. If you're putting in a 50, if you're building a 50-story high rise, you may run into a problem on the 30th floor, and then on the second floor, it's a completely different problem. So even though you're on the same job site, you still don't have the same day. And I love it. I love the variety. I love the physical labor. I don't know. I've seen guys who do a 10-hour day and then go spend 2 hours in the gym. I don't know how they do that. I love what I do. It's a physically demanding job. You get out of it what you put into it. And I feel like I'm
mhm.
in great shape because of it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like because you're physically moving around all day, but
Oh, I
that's
put in 20,000 steps a day easy.
yeah, that's nice. That it helps.
Yeah. Hey, trust me, I burn more calories than I take in, and
Yeah.
that's daily, no matter what I'm doing. And there are some job sites where the first job site I ever worked, I worked in Seattle, and I had a my journeyman that was training me. His name was Chris. Great guy, loved him to death. We would take the man lift up because we were working floors 30 through 34 or
Mhm,
35. So we would take the man lift up in the morning. We'd go in and we'd start putting in our panels and putting in the glass and doing the ceiling and the caulking and doing everything. At the end of the day, we'd race each other down the stairs, 40 flights all the way down nonstop. And it's been that way on a couple of different job sites. But yeah, you're up and downstairs on some of these commercial sites. They may not have a honey bucket except every 5 floors. So if you've got a honey bucket on the 30th and the 35th, but you're on 32 or 33, now you
mhm.
got to decide: are you going to wait for the man lift? Or are you going to run downstairs or upstairs? So yeah, you're up and down the stairs. You're running around. You 20,000 steps a day easy. Plus, you got to go down to the ground level. You got to dump out garbage. You got to go pick up supplies, pick up material. You got to run down for deliveries, belling and rigging, running a forklift. Got to go down and get the portable crane and take it up to the 30th floor so you can install panels on the 28th floor. Yeah, you never sit still. If you're sitting still, then you're not doing something right.
Wait, I have a question. Have you ever, like, dropped a big piece of glass?
Have I dropped a piece of glass? No, not in a way that would be risky. I've
Yeah.
broken lots of glass. I have heard stories of panels. So here's the thing. When I say panels, if you are in a major city
Mhm,
and you look at the skyscrapers, right? The entire outside of the building looks like it's all glass. That's not just glass. It's metal framing, it's insulation, there's back metal between the insulation and the wall, but those pieces of glass are an entire panel unit. So, I've heard so when we say panel systems, it's like stacking Legos. You put the panels together and wrap it around the floor, and then you move up
Mhm.
to the next floor, and the panels for 30 will sit on the top of the panels for 29, and you just wrap them back around. I've
Okay.
never dropped a panel. I have heard stories where the general contractor was like, "Hey, you need to put this panel in," and the guys were like, "Hey, we don't have a crane rated for that." And they're like, "Well, you need to do it anyway." And they said, "Okay, well, that's your rear end." So they sent a panel off the building, and as soon as it cleared the building, the suction cups gave way and it dropped 30 stories. I have worked on a job site directly across the street where I saw a portable crane on the sixth or seventh floor try and pull a panel off on the fourth floor, and they weren't paying attention, and when the panel swung out, the momentum and the weight of the panel pulled the entire crane right out of the building and landed in the middle of the street. So I've seen it, I've heard stories about it. I have not done panel setting to the degree where I've ever had to risk dropping anything,
Mhm.
knock on wood. But yeah, it's happened. I've seen things get dropped off. Seen tape measures get knocked off a belt loop, 30 floors up. I've seen pry bars and jimmy bars and socket wrenches get knocked out of a boom lift, 85 feet, 90 feet up in the air. It's one of the reasons why we tape off the area on the ground below where we're working. But people look at the danger tape and say, "Oh, it doesn't apply to me," and walk under. But yeah, I've seen lots of stuff go flying off buildings.
You work with the same group of people every day?
One of my best friends, his name's Dustin. I started with him the same month I was starting my divorce. And the entire process of my divorce, him and I were on the same crew every day. Him and I were always partnered together. We got to know a lot about each other. But, when you spend 8, 10, 12 hours a day working with the same two or three people, especially if you're in a boom lift or if you're on a swing stage, you get to know who you're working with really, really well. Because if something goes wrong, you want to know that they're going to have your back and they're going to do what they have to make sure you're taken care of. I've seen guys that come onto a job site and they'll bounce from one crew to another crew to another crew. They're just kind of like fill-in guys. Most companies will have their set crew. If these five guys are setting panels and they do real well, those five guys will always be together with that company setting panels. If you've got these, four or five guys that are really good at prepping out the panels and getting the floor cleared and getting everything laid out for the setting crew, then chances are those four or five guys will always be together. And then you've got, a couple of guys that'll come in and they'll just float from crew to crew and just kind of fill in because if someone calls out sick or whatever. But yeah, if you're in a major metro area, you tend to you get put on a crew and you stick with that crew. Out here where it's more Midwestern, sometimes I'm with one guy, sometimes I'm with another, sometimes I'm out running job tickets on my own by myself. So it really depends on where you're at and what's going on.
You have children. Would you gear them towards the college route, or would you gear them maybe towards, like, the trades route?
Uh, my daughter, I'm pushing toward college because she wants to be a veterinarian and she wants to be an animal trainer.
That's
So she wants to. If you scroll through TikTok and you see like, the animal sanctuaries that have leopards and lions and all these exotic animals, she wants to do
yeah,
that. She wants to work with those kind of animals. But to do that, that requires a college degree. It
yeah.
require, if you want to be a veterinarian, for those kind of animals, you got to go to college. So yeah, I push her toward college. My son has no desire to go to college. He
Yeah.
wants to be construction. He wants to be a truck driver. He wants to do something that doesn't require him to go into debt, but allows him to enjoy life. My son loves to travel. He loves to see the country. He's 10 now, so, he'll probably change his mind another dozen times between now and the time he's 20. But right now, he's telling me he wants to go to truck driving school. He wants to learn how to be over the road so he can travel coast to coast. It allows him to be productive. It allows him to be beneficial and a contributing member of society, but it doesn't require him to go into debt to do it. I'm real fortunate with the amount of money I make. I've got it's called a 529 account. I've got those set up for all my kids. So if my kids get to 21, 22 years old and college is something they want to do, we can do it. We'll have the ability to do it without them going into debt because I've already started saving for it. Um, but if they decide not to go to college, then I can roll those 529s into a IRA, and whatever money that they've got saved up for college that doesn't get used for it, now that's half the battle for them.
Yeah.
At 25 years old, if they're not going to college, I can convert their 529s into an IRA account. And now they've got tens of thousands of dollars already saved and they're 25 years old. And that would not be possible for me to do if I didn't have the career that I have. Because the career I have, I bring home four figures a paycheck. I bring home six figures a year. And there's no college degree required.
Someone I've talked to is really proud of their job. Sounds like you are too. Like it's a different type of conversation. I don't know how to explain it. It's nice to see. So far, everyone I've spoken to is like really proud of the trade that they're in.
Well, I don't have anything against white collar guys. All right. I couldn't do it. I couldn't sit in a cubicle. I couldn't deal with investment, bankers or whatever because I don't like people. So if someone were to come at me with an attitude and I was working white collar, I'd be bouncing from company to company. Because if you come at me with an attitude, I'm going to come at you with the same attitude. One of the benefits of working blue collar is we get it as good as we give it. So,
Mhm.
if we'll go at each other, especially if something gets really screwed up. We're under pressure, under a deadline, whatever. It Language gets real colorful. Tempers flare. I've been involved in a couple myself. I've seen more than a couple where someone has to come in and go, hey, why don't you go over here on this side of the building? You go over there on this side of the building. Go down to the street, do whatever, breathe. And then 10 minutes later, we're back up because we're allowed to yell at each other. It doesn't carry over in my field with the glazers that I've dealt with in my career, a lot of us have hey, it happened on the job site. It stays on the job site. None of us carry it home. I've seen two guys go out get into it on a job site, go out off the job site so they don't get in trouble, get into a shoving match because they didn't agree, come back, finish out the workday. As soon as they clocked out at the end of the day, forgot all about it, went and had a couple beers, got some burgers and steaks. That was it. But you don't have that kind of freedom working a white collar office job. We also know, the guys that I deal with on a daily basis, we know that there's not a lot we can't do. I mean, I could make four phone calls and I would have enough people that we could build a house from scratch. I know three electricians, I know five plumbers, I know me, my brother, most of my real close friends in Seattle, we're all glazers.
Mhm.
Carpentry is a piece of cake for all of us. And then one of the guys that I used to ride motorcycles with is a concrete guy. We could literally build a house in a month, the 5, 6 of us. So we know that we always have something that we can fall back on. If you're an investment banker and the stock market crashes, or they get away with fungible money like dollar bills and coins and it all becomes cryptocurrency, and or it's all digital, what are you going to do
Yeah.
as a tradesman, as someone who has a skill? People are always going to need houses, people are always going to need buildings, and those buildings are always going to need plumbing, they're always going to need electricity, they're always going to need windows so they can see what's going on, they're always going to need whatever it is, and there's a certain pride in knowing that you can do that.
My side is when you're looking for anyone in the trades, it's really hard to find because they're just so busy. So they're, like,
Well,
booking you out
like
for months.
but But you can use it for the betterment of yourself and the community at the same time. The example I've got for that is when my kids were young, 2 years, I think my son was 2 and my daughter was 3. I've got Irish twins, they're 11 months apart. I love it. They were going to a very good daycare, or 1 and 2. My ex-wife found it, we put them in the daycare, and the daycare had was run out of a school that was built in the '50s, and all the glass in it was original. But a couple of the daycare rooms, the glass had been shot through with BBs. So I looked at him and I was like, "Hey, what are you going to do about the glass, especially with winter coming?" And they said, "Well, what could you do?" And I said, "Well, me and my brother, we can do this, this, and this." And they said, "Okay. Well, if you do that, we'll pay for the glass. We'll pay your brother, and we'll give you free daycare." My brother and I, it took us 2 days over the weekend. They ordered all the glass. We replaced all their broken windows. It made the community safer because now the kids could play in these rooms without fear of glass falling down, without, weather coming in as it got colder. It gave me a discount on the daycare for X amount of months. It gave my brother money in his pocket. But those are skills and trades that we can do with community, uh, that isn't reliant on money. I was able to get daycare needs met for me and my family. My brother, he had, an income just on 2 days worth of work, but the daycare, they had safe glass being put in, they had it being put in professionally, and they didn't have to pay anything more than what the cost of the glass itself was. It's a way to give back to the community as well.
Yeah, it seems like it.
I saw one of the comments on the TikTok page that says, "Oh, they install windows."